Here we have young adult author Libba Bray. What got you into young adult literature, into writing it?
It was actually my husband, believe it or not, who was always in children's and YA. He worked in publishing. And I was a playwright to start, which is a fabulously lucrative career, very rewarding. And I was feeling really, really rewarded as I dug all those coins out of my couch to buy milk. And I had had a baby and I was home, and my husband said, you know, I think maybe you might try writing YA. And I wasn't really familiar with it at the time, because when I was growing up, you kind of went straight from, Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, into adult books, and with, like a brief foray into Flowers in the Attic. So I didn't really know what it was, and I started reading all of this amazing literature. I remember reading Realm of Possibility and Speak. Those were two early ones, and Gingerbread. So Realm of Possibility by David Levithan, Gingerbread by Rachel Cohn, Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson, and just being blown away and thinking, wow, this is amazing. This is really what I want to do.
So, what were some of your favorite books when you were a teenager, even if there wasn't necessarily a YA category?
Some of my favorite books as a teenager, I read a lot of humor, so things that weren't books. I read National Lampoon magazine pretty religiously, but I remember distinctly reading Catcher in the Rye, and I know a lot of people hate Catcher in the Rye. I loved it. It was sort of my Bible at that age. I had this amazing AP English teacher, Willa Mae Burlage, who was about 5'0" and weighed about 90 pounds sopping wet. And I remember that she kind of took an interest in me, which was, of course, wonderful at that age. And she had this great distinctive speaking style. She would say, "Libba, have you read any Salinger?" And I said, "No, I haven't read any Salinger." And she said, "There's a book. You can't get it here because it's banned, but you could get it at the public library." Yay, public libraries. And she said it's called Catcher in the Rye, and I think that you would really, really like it. So I went off immediately in search of this sort of, this book that couldn't be gotten. And I fell in love with Holden on the first page. I just felt like the minute he said that this was phony and that was phony, that it spoke to my soul. So that was a big one for me. A Separate Peace was a big one for me. The Bell Jar. All really fun, uplifting books. I went on a Salinger kick too after that. I remember reading Freddie and Zoe and 9 Stories. I did love reading short stories. I loved Shirley Jackson.
Can you talk a little about the process of writing your first novel, and then when you finished it, getting it to publication?
Yes, I can talk about that. Well, I will start by saying that I had actually, one of the ways that I kind of cut my teeth and learned to write YA was that I wrote for a packager first. I wrote for Alloy, and I wrote 3 books for them, which I described as McNovel. It's like, here's the idea, you give us a detailed outline, which is so funny. If anyone who knows me, like, detailed outline, please. I'm lucky I'm wearing socks. And then, it's like, and now you have 6 weeks to write that. Thank you, drive through, please. Here's your side of fries. And it's not my preferred way to write a novel, but I certainly learned a lot of discipline doing it. But after doing about 3 of those, I said, you know what? I think I really would like to write my own stuff now, not work for hire. And I had this idea that I had wanted to write. I love ghost stories, and I love Victorian novels. I love the Gothic. When I was growing up, I had a great-grandmother who used to tell me ghost stories, and I loved it. And she would tell me all these creepy things and these stories from our own family, because supposedly I had a great-great-great-great-grandmother who was psychic, and so there are all these creepy stories that she would tell me, and then it'd be like, "Okay, good night, honey. Oh no, we'll let you out in the morning. You'll be fine." So I really wanted to tell a ghost story because I love to read them, and so I had this idea that that was going to be sort of this Victorian boarding school kind of book, and I saw it initially as a series, and kind of like a long-running series. And initially, the idea, I sold it on proposal. And the way that happened was that one of the books I had written for Alloy had been published by Random House, and my editor there, Wendy Loja, happened to like very, very much and got on well with. And so I said to her, I've got this idea. If I wrote up a synopsis, would you like to see it? And she said, yes, sure. So I did that, and originally it was something like, it had like 14 billion books. And then in episode 427, those crazy Victorians, and it kind of skewed a little young, actually. It was a little Scooby-Doo, sort of like, you know, and I would have made it too if it weren't for you meddling Victorian kids. Your carriage, your Mystery Machine carriage. So I turned this into her along with sort of the beginning stages of this novel, and Wendy very wisely said to me, you know, I don't really feel like this is the book you want to write. I feel like what you want to write is something darker and creepier, just having talked to you. It's funny how people meet me and they think, ooh, dark and creepy. I don't know where they get that idea. Molly, are you afraid to be with me in here?
I'm good.
So I'm really grateful to her for having said that, because she was right. The book I wanted to write was emotionally much more complex. And when I sat down to actually kind of dive into it, I realized there was a lot I wanted to explore about female sexuality and how scary that is to the world at large. I mean, women owning themselves is always sort of a scary thing, even now, maybe more so now. And so that was really sort of the beginning of it. And the story is that I signed the contract to write A Great and Terrible Beauty, what would become A Great and Terrible Beauty, on September 10th, 2001. And my first day of work was supposed to be September 11th, 2001.
Oh, wow.
And I live in New York City. Clearly that was not my first day of work. So there was about 4 months where I didn't write anything. And then when I came back to it, I'm sure that was part of it too. It was a different book. So yes, that was really sort of the process. I wrote the first draft in about, I'd say 6 months. And then it came back to me, and then I wrote the second draft in about 3 or 4 months. I went to England and did research, and then I think like the last go round was about a month or so. So I guess, soup to nuts, the actual writing is probably like a year and a half.
Do you feel like you're trying to tell teens anything through your books, which sounds, I guess, a moral or a message?
Oh, hells no.
No morals or messages.
No morals, no messages. I feel like nobody asks writers of adult literature, what moral or message does your book convey? No, you're telling a story. I'm always on that ride with the reader, because for me as a writer, what's interesting is trying to figure out what story I'm trying to tell, and at some point realizing why personally I needed to tell that story. But I feel like if I have a moral or a message, first of all, I would never have the authority to do that. Please see previous reference to It's a Miracle I Have Socks On. But I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in somebody. There's a great quote, and I wish I could tell you who said it. I wish I could give you the attribution. But somebody said that writing is the autobiography of humanity. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in figuring out what makes us all tick, and what makes me tick, and my place in the world. It's all that juicy, complicated, horrible, wonderful stuff. I want to explore that, and I'm happy to have people along for the ride. But no, I would never try to give a message or a moral. Now,